All right, call this meeting to order. Flat Reservation Water Management Board work session. And so a few things we want to talk about the agenda first.
Well, Teresa is here.
Hey, Teresa. Okay. Oh, so as we are starting the meeting, we have one additional member who arrived and we will get her set up and we're ready to go. So Teresa, come on in.
Come on down.
Come on down. Hey, Teresa.
The other two.
It is a little warmer in here today, so you may or may not need your jacket. But I see you have them to wear, so.
I've got 4 layers on.
All right,
I doubled up today too. I was like,
good deal.
you know what happens after 5?
Go again. Good deal. So, okay,
Yeah,
I go.
absolutely.
So, before we move on, we want to sort of chat about the agenda. So anybody have any changes to the agenda? One change I am suggesting is because it's a work session, we are required to provide public notice and provide the public opportunity to observe. We are not required to do public comment, is my understanding. So if the board concurs with that, we will remove the public comment portions from this agenda. That's my understanding, so unless we have some thoughts or objections to that. Good at that?
I'm good with that.
Good with that? Okay, so we'll remove the public comment section, but we do acknowledge that the public is here in the audience and online available to observe as a work session. So aside from that, are there any other comments on the agenda before we approve the agenda today?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the agenda as revised.
Okay, motion to approve the agenda as revised, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we have a volunteer for an opening prayer. Okay, Georgia, thank you.
Dear Lord, we just want to thank you for this sunny day that we're having today. And for this opportunity to meet together once again to take care of board matters. We ask that you give us guidance as we go through this and that our decisions be wise and be full of power. We ask this in the name.
Okay, Lemon. Attendance.
Here.
Here. Here. Here.
Here. And after change.
All right, thank you very much. And I guess we already adopted the agenda, so we're good there. So going on the work session, personnel policy draft and discussion and board bylaws draft and discussion, so that we don't have to take them in particular order. But I think if you want to, Ethan, if you want to kind of walk us through some of the personnel policy issues first. I know that personally, I spent most of my time working on the bylaws. But I think we can touch on the personnel policies, and of course, if anybody has any questions or comments, we should do that. And just a side note for everybody to know, I'm out of here at 4:30 today, so you guys can continue on the rest of the evening and order out the pizza, whatever you want to do. But at 4:30 today, I am out of here, so appreciate your time. So, all right, with that, Ethan.
Excellent, Mr. Chairman, board members. I have in front of you an initial draft of some personnel policies. This particular draft did some changes from the hard work that the personnel policy committee had done. Took that work and made some modifications, some changes in the organization based on some of the forward movement that we've had. Namely, this particular draft kind of moves out of a handbook format into just a straight up policy format. It really removes the board member aspects from these policies and focuses on paid personnel out of the office of the engineer. And also kind of set up an organizational structure. It's got an interactive table of contents that is intended to help things move along as we go through. And you'll notice there's still a lot of pending elements, but what I have tried to do is auger in on some of the policies that were drafted up and do what we needed to do to kind of make any changes or any other important bits. I do thank board member Wall McDonald and board member Noble for some of their one-on-one conversations that helped me, I think, get things moving in a certain direction. I look forward to speaking with other board members when they've got time to give this a good once over and give me some feedback. And really that a couple of key things that I did need to deal with. Our office, because it is a government office, regardless of size, does need to comply with Family Medical Leave Act. So we've made some changes to try to accommodate that.
Where's that? We can highlight it.
You asked me the hard questions there.
Leave benefits, number seven,
Leave benefits.
7.05. All right,
Right.
I'm just gonna mark it, so.
I will also note that with some comments with our staff earlier this morning, I suspect I tried to get the holidays a little figured out, and we still need some work on that. So you have a draft that has holidays that is going to shift it a little bit slightly. So forgive us as we move through that. And we still have, I think, an easy, low-hanging fruit opportunity for designating travel. I'm going to largely mimic what the state has done for travel. I think that would work well for us here. If anybody has some different thoughts about that, they can let me know. Or after we have the draft in front of you for the travel provisions, that would also be an opportunity to let me know. We still do need to work through some elements of the ADA compliance, the safety officer assignment and the safety plan for the office, and workers' compensation amongst a few other items. In general, like I said, I just kind of wanted to introduce you to this document, get it in front of you, let you know that it's a living document, and I do expect to have some feedback and some shifting, but it's really that's probably the main objective of getting in on the docket today.
Hey. Comments, thoughts, questions, concerns at this point? Open for discussion. So I'm assuming this first time I've seen, and if I meant to have seen it before, I didn't. I paid most of my attention to the bylaws, so I'm assuming maybe others have seen this and had some time with it, but appreciate you bringing it forward.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I did just distribute it here with this meeting material, so you haven't had it in your lap very long.
Okay.
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Is it the intention today that we go through section by section, or how are we intending to proceed? Or is it handed out today with comments coming back?
What I hear Ethan saying is, since we're just getting it, it's open. If you want to spend some time on it today, we can do that. Otherwise, we have this draft. We should forward any comments to Ethan and prepare for a future work session to discuss this in full.
Cool.
Possibly
So that's-
even groom the document, one-on-one, if you so chose to fill up the office, you make some improvements, that's invited.
Yeah, so that's where I understood it to be, so. Good with that.
Good with that.
Roger? Ken? Okay, good, Roger?
Yep.
All right, so if somebody's excited about diving into the personnel policies during the day, let's speak up and we'll do that. Otherwise, with that, we can move on to the board bylaws draft discussion. So thank you, Ethan.
I'm gonna see if can you add me as a panelist so I can share my screen?
I can't.
Yeah, I was asking you, Chairman May. All right, I should be able to share my screen, and the intent of our new seating arrangement and such is that we will, my screen's there now. Nope, that's. Sorry to figure this out here real quick. Yeah, but I'm wanting to put them up from my computer. Sorry for the. I think I should be able to share my screen, right? It is currently disabled by the host. New technologies have been a little challenge for us today. Okay. Okay. Oh, excellent.
My version is different from yours. Yeah, I know. I don't have the same version.
Wait, that's my screen. Yep. Okay, so we have the bylaws in front of us, and you should have a copy of your bylaws. And what I'm hoping we could do is we can go through and part the delay or operate, but we can try to do some real-time editing of the bylaws if you'd like to today.
So one thing, let's make sure everyone has, I mean, I see what's on your screen and I have the version in print of draft of 2/5 of 22. Does everyone have that draft?
I do not.
Georgia does not.
I do not. I think
So
Can we print out a copy of the bylaws for?
you guys got
I
the,
can give her, I have a couple copies.
you got a couple,
There we
okay.
go.
She can- If I miss some of my comments, you can add them.
Thank you. No, I
Oh,
had these printed and I grabbed the wrong copy when I left.
Mr. Chairman, just so you know, Roger and I got together, was it first week of February?
Yeah.
I went through these side by side.
Good, so you can whip us right through it. We'll be done in a half hour.
Let's say that. in a little bit.
Oh, okay.
We want to get you out of here at 4:30.
Well, I'm out here 4:30 regardless. So I think this is an open discussion. So at this point, I'm just gonna, Ethan's gonna run through this on the screen, but I think I suggest we just kind of go page by page, section by section here and try to figure it out.
Okay, I'll start just right at the top. I think we should delete this lightheaded addition on management board.
Got it. I agree. For the title?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm a little slow. Haven't had enough coffee.
Oh, well, there's somebody needs coffee.
Yeah.
I know somebody made coffee.
I'll have some. Thanks, you know.
Oh, somebody made coffee earlier, so.
Yeah.
The red says, what it says. I made a note says not necessary. But what do you guys think?
Are you talking about the general question of whether?
Yeah.
Really just semantics on how you want the document listed and whether or not the article numbers are confusing because the compact uses article numbers. And so, you know, there are other terms that could be used. That was the intent.
Well, there's kind of an overarching question here. Roger and I discussed that, and that's should the bylaws just simply repeat stuff that's already in the compact or in the ordinance? And we just sort of throw that out for discussion, because it doesn't add anything
Well,
to the bylaws.
my thought early on was rather than just repeating it, they would reference it, recite it. If that, unless it needs to be repeated in there for some functional purpose that we just cited. And there may be things in there that we want to keep out of the ordinance, but if it is out of the ordinance, we should cite it. That's my thought, right? Is that what you were thinking?
Well, yeah, if it's not necessary for the bylaws, it's in the articles, and I just don't really see a need for it in the bylaws.
Okay. So as we go through this, we kind of keep an eye on that. Is
I
that what
mean,
you-
you know, it's gonna make it easier reading, easier to understand, I think, maybe for just me.
I think we need to consider who's going to see the bylaws and also how they're used. So if you think about a new employee or a new board member at some point in time, what is the orientation they're going to get to the office and the functions that we perform? So if we think about with a new person, we're going to go through the ordinance and then go through the bylaws, and it's kind of organized and systematic, you know, then I do agree with your comment that I think we should keep in mind who's going to see them and how they're going to be used.
So you see this as a training document too.
Absolutely,
Or so
or,
we need to keep that in mind, how we organize it.
yes, or an orientation document. So a new employee would get the bylaws and the compact and other documents.
Anybody else need a cup of coffee?
But I do think if you do cite it, you should
Thank you.
provide the citation.
If we, so what I think you're saying, what I'm hearing is if we put the language in there. That we give the citation
Yes.
from the ordinance so that people know, and that's where I agree with that. That's what I think early on what I was referring to. If it's gonna be in there, we should. So either we include it or not. If we do, we need to include the citation.
That's my opinion.
And that makes it a more robust training tool as well, right? So they
Yes.
can, they're actually getting trained on 2 documents at once. Okay.
So we don't want them to have to read the whole compact.
You do, but they may need to read it a few times.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay. Did you have any thoughts on the question on that?
I mostly, Mr. Chairman, board members, I mostly put the question in there because as I was trying to insert the citations that you had requested for this particular version, I got a little confused because there's articles.
Okay,
And so you've got you've got the bylaws of Article 1 referencing in Article 1 of the compact. And, so that, to me, it kind of got a little circular. But again, that might just have been my particular outlook that day.
so if we kept the outline utilizing the verbiage article and sections, if we cite the compact, we should say compact article as you have there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Just want to double check.
well, as you said, it's supposed to be a living document, so
Right, and I heard, we can just
we can kill it later.
kill this right there, right? And leave the organization as is. Okay, excellent, thank you. Would you like, anybody want to direct me to the next section, or I'll slowly scroll in?
Right there.
Oh, sorry, okay.
But
So
it should say, U.S. Department of the Interior, yeah,
Okay, so what should,
U period, test period. No, leave that,
oh, sorry.
in front of department,
yeah,
capital U, period, capital S period.
Yeah.
there you go.
There we go.
Interior. Yes, Department of there you go.
I had a question up above before this. The board's creation and jurisdiction began on September 17th, which is the effective date. But so technically, we all had jurisdiction before we were appointed. I didn't.
Maybe it should just say jurisdiction and delete creation.
Yeah,
Good point.
there we go. This is exactly, kind of input. I think we'll move this document along. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I think Teresa's question still stands. Does it matter? Board of jurisdiction,
Well, thank
the
you.
effective date was September 17, 2021. But the board itself wasn't finally created until all members were appointed.
Right.
So.
So
Not
then,
sure how we want to word that.
so when I think about jurisdiction, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, it's like, so if we take an official action, we approve something. We don't have a retroactive date till September 17, 2021, the date of our approvals and our actions. I mean, so that's where I was coming from. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, jurisdiction began on this date, but when we begin acting, it's.
So it's a separate sentence.
Yeah, well,
You would have a follow-up sentence. So the board's jurisdiction began on September 17, which is the effective date of the compact. Second sentence, the initial board was officially seated in whatever day that was
There
in
you go.
2022.
Yeah.
shouldn't say implementation, the word's implementation. It's really, didn't have much jurisdiction when there was nobody there.
For what it's worth, the board members, you did backdate approvals
Did
to
we?
September the 17th.
Oh,
For, you may not remember, we did put applications for new wells in your lap that they had nowhere to file, but we allowed grace periods and such to permitted file.
Did that escape me, but that answers one of the questions that I have.
You know, this is such an important process that one sentence 10 years from now will be so important because
Maybe
People
even a year
forget.
from now, yeah.
I can't remember the date that you guys all came together officially. I'd have to go back and check my notes. And
Yeah, 2 cents. I don't think that sentence necessary. I mean, it really makes no difference when we are seated. What's important is when the compact created our jurisdiction. That's just me.
I'm just thinking, if this is used as a training document and you're trying to provide some history or capture some of that, this is a way to do it. And I think 10 years from now, will people recall that the jurisdiction began in September, but we weren't able to do anything for several months? Right?
Devil's advocate, it doesn't matter.
Maybe not from a legal standpoint, but from just an institutional memory.
Okay.
So however you
Right
want to
there.
capture that,
Historical standpoint, so
Yeah.
either do it, maybe do it as a footnote. Just put a footnote, and then the footnote is,
oh,
we
there you
didn't,
go.
There you go.
we didn't actually seek the board until now.
Yes. I like
What
that.
does the compact language actually say about the effective date relative to the board?
This,
It says what?
that the board becomes the official jurisdiction.
That's the language, the
Yeah,
compact
I
language?
mean, I gotta read the.
That's what I'm wondering, so
It's the general intent. So we should have citation.
It says upon the effective date of the compact, the ordinance shall govern all water rights.
Okay, so it's the ordinance, not the board, so the ordinance and effective date. And maybe we just, if we want it, maybe we just include that and cite it. Yeah,
Wasn't it?
So even if you want to go back and refer to it, it's 1-1-101-3.
That's the one that's referenced.
Yeah.
I'll probably put the compact reference.
The compact says pursuant to Article 4, of the compact, the Water Management Board is established.
It's possible I might have just thinned it down and make it a little more concise, if I am responsible for writing this.
no, it's.
No,
So what did you just cite?
This is the ordinance. So these pursuant to Article 4.1 of the compact, the Water Management Board is established.
It just says that there will be a water bill.
It says it is established.
Yeah. But unless that 4.1 says something else, it just, all it says is it's established. Just creates it.
On the effective date, the board shall be the exclusive regulatory body.
Oh. So that's more, that is the name for that.
We have some options here as typing it in. I'm messing it up, but is anything sticking?
I don't think you're messing it up. I missed the fact that we were backdating things. I do like the idea of a footnote there because it did take a bit of time to officially seat the board. I look at just for historical reference.
I like to put.
And that last piece you just read probably is what we put and then cite that.
All right, so we like the board is established, the board shall be the exclusive regulatory. Pull that out of the compact, this is gonna be the primary.
So you're just making notes here and we'll go back. and-
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to do this, quite justice on the time or so. You wanted to, we can, it will take long.
I just applaud you for doing this with a group of people. That's not easy.
At
So,
least it's only 4 or 5. Not 10, right?
Montana Supreme Court.
That's right.
This is a county, but designed by a committee.
Okay. Just slowly scroll along, nothing intending to skip over something that's important to you.
let's see, so you had ex officio member, the board shall also have a 6 non-voting member appointed by the. Okay. We're good.
Got your terms.
So this 2.3 over there.
Yeah. Unless we're on 2.2.
I don't see where that's necessary. I should just cite that. It's kind of paraphrased anyways, it's just really well spelled out in what you want, so.
I believe I'd added this in because somebody wanted to have the eligibility spelled out in the bylaws. Which I can get, I'm not trying to steer the ship here, just trying to facilitate things.
I can leave it in.
You're citing a compact. It's just the language. Let's see, compact article 4.1.
Okay, I keep going back to who's gonna be reading this and who's gonna be using it, right? So if it's for staff and for training, this would be really helpful to have. If it's not, it's redundant. So who's the primary audience for your bylaws?
The board itself, I think.
Yeah,
I think the bylaws are meant to guide us and how we operate. That's the way I view bylaws.
I guess when I read it, I didn't quite look at it that way, but we can leave it in.
well, no, I see your point. This is just how I approach writing, is who's gonna be reading it. And so if you're onboarding new board members in the future, would it be helpful for them to have all of this in one document, or do you want them to cross-reference? Right, and so it's just who's the audience, so if it's us.
I think I think generally the bylaws I've looked at do include a statement on board eligibility, but it's in the compact, so it's redundant, but isn't that okay to have it in both places?
Sure. We can leave it.
Roger's being a good engineer, he's being efficient, that's right. Let's cut some language in the can, right?
Less is better.
Less is better, less is.
I have a brief side question that I just thought about because I can hear the typing over my right shoulder. But during a work session, what kind of meeting minutes are expected to be recorded?
I think that if we. At some point, I want to have us do some kind of work session on the open meeting laws, because that really is relevant to the open meeting laws.
Okay.
And my understanding is that we have to have minutes.
Okay.
Now, the kind of minutes are general minutes. I don't think it's word for word type of minutes,
Right.
but meant to be minutes that sort of reflect the work we're doing here.
Sorry for the interruption. It's out of respect.
That's my understanding of the open meeting law requirements.
Being recorded, so that knows what that recorded.
Yeah.
Sorry to get sidetracked. I just want to make sure. Okay, 2.4 is where we're at, because I understood, did you guys land on, we're gonna leave this in here, even though it's redundant with the compact, and useful for a new board member, or possibly the public trying to understand the board, and check out that.
Doesn't hurt.
For these.
Had to have paid.
Okay, 2.4, I did abbreviate this from a previous version at the request of the board, and
I don't understand the first sentence. It's just hard to understand. Is there a simpler way to phrase that?
I had the same comment, and it doesn't, the compact itself on this one, the full verbiage isn't in there, and if you add the full verbiage, then it becomes clear. As what I recall, when I reviewed this.
right, again, I was told that abbreviated, sorry. It doesn't mean it was clear, it's clear. But,
So I would go back in and cite that sentence in its entirety, the way it was stated. And then it'll help out. I struggle with that too, Georgia.
And
Well, I've read it several times and I just can't, I get lost.
it's a compound sentence, for sure. You have to read it through it and get to the end before it makes any sense. But yeah, but if that language can be pulled out of the compact and you just cite it, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it makes it simplify it, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
great.
All right,
Sorry to interrupt, but I think we're going to talk about.
Okay. Oh, okay, excellent, thank you.
does
Sorry,
the compact language say 30 days?
I don't know.
Because that's another one that's one I had a question, like, is 30 days enough?
if the 30 days, I would have taken that from the compact.
If it's in the compact, it is, that's it. If it's not, I'm gonna suggest we go to 45 or 60.
I'm still struggling, I'm sorry. That's just like the worst thing I've ever read.
He's gonna replace it with compact, the language out of the compact.
Well, now I'm on the second sentence though. Should board action be required? Isn't there a better way to phrase that doesn't require you to go 6 ways to Sunday to get to the end? I mean, it's like, should board? should
Take a shot at it.
Okay, should board action be required during the period of any such vacancy? The following offices, the following departments will be contacted, parentheses. Boom, boom, boom. And then a period. If the vacancy is under the purview of the tribal council. I don't even know what that's trying to tell me.
Fills in and who's gonna go.
Right, but do you know who goes with where in that sentence? Because it seems like if the vacancy is under the purview of the governor, that should be a separate sentence.
The director of the DNRC will stand or will fulfill the term on the appointment is made. The vacancy is under the
That's what
purview
you
of the
know,
governor.
those make sense.
The director of the DNRC shall fill the vacant position until a new appointment is made.
Right, but my problem is they've combined
Right,
two
Right.
organizations in one sentence instead of separating them. So have one for tribe,
yes.
one for the state, and make it
Yes.
very clear who goes where, because you get lost in who's going where. And it sounds like it's hard.
I get the intent, but it needs to be reworded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's see if we
Yeah.
can simplify that.
Yes.
Again, I think that same language is in the compact language itself. It's pretty,
Is that language in the compact?
I thought it was,
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, then we could just cite it. and
yeah,
leave
if
that.
that is, then let's do that. If not, then yeah, let's reword this.
If it's written like that in the compact, it's still confusing.
No, I'm looking for it, but I can't.
But
Because it's supposed to mean like, so if the vacancy is, under the purview of the tribal council, you look to the department head of the tribal natural resources department, or resources department. Whereas instead of the governor, you look to the director of the DNRC.
I understand the
Yeah.
intent. My problem is with the way it's worded. You should always have your subject and verb as close together as possible. And they've stretched them so far apart, you get lost who's doing what. So if we could put subject and verb agreement. Look, we could tighten that up. It increases understanding. I think.
So it,
So can I jump in real quick? Go ahead and continue, but Ken had to step out and take care of something. I need to do something on the phone here, so if you guys are okay with continuing your discussion, otherwise you'll get paused, so I'm gonna step out of the room for just a minute.
if you have the ordinance in front of you under membership, point 2 point. Anyways, G vacancies, it's all spelled out right there. I just said, pull that in.
Does it read any clearer?
Here, let me read it.
Okay.
Subject to the provisions of Article 4.1.2. And C, regarding the filling of a vacancy for the fifth member of the board upon the occurrence any other vacancy in a board position with tribal council. If the vacancy position is appointed by the tribal council or the government, and it is pretty wordy. If the vacancy is in a position appointed by the governor, shall name a new board member within 30 days of the answer the vacancy.
I give whoever wrote that an F. No, that is impossible to track and understand, but subject with verb. Let's read, can we do that? Can we change the wording?
Yeah, you can change it.
Can we
It's a
do that?
bylaw, you create the bylaws. So,
This is a good opportunity for you to make a better clarification of language that needs to be a little lackluster. So
I'm just a simple country girl. I need simple sentences here. I can't handle these compound run on. It makes my blood pressure go up to.
I agree totally.
All right, let's take a crack at this.
But it's some simple country boy language.
Yes, please. Okay, should board action be required during the period of any such vacancy for a tribally appointed board member? The following departments would be contacted. Boom, boom, boom. Should board action be required during the period of any such vacancy for a governor appointed or state
Yes.
appointed board member? These people or departments would be contacted. Does that make more sense?
I will reword it like that. And I'll make it make more sense. I'll stray from the compact language.
Thank you.
It'll be in front of you and see if it works out.
And I think it's more than contactable. I think that they're intended to be, to substitute as the appointee, as a voting member
Yeah.
until
Until such time.
they're not just contacted. I think they would be acting appointments.
Yeah, however, we can just.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
I think you're
yes.
talking of, rather than one big compound sentence, you're talking about two separate sentences.
And keep the thoughts separated so that it's easy to sort. So I'll quit ranting now. I'm done.
No, you're good. That's why we're here.
All right, page 3. Removal of board members. Oh, yay.
Oh, yay.
Those who complain about fonts and so provide.
You did provide a number of options, so if everybody's had a chance to look, you don't have to agonize over all the options. We can just sort of go down and decide one by one here, what options have you sort of decided you prefer, and I'll step out and tell you, for now, option 7 looks like the best option to me, but that's just me. So.
Woo, I like 7.
What was your second?
It's on page 1. And more. Oh. Okay, look at my 7. Don't have a 7.
You still don't have the same copy you had.
You're right there.
You have a problem, child.
No, but 7's good.
I like how brief it is.
There were 2 other options that were similar, but that one just is kind of more focused, I thought.
See, that's a perfect sentence.
An A.
Yes, that one gets an A. I like that. I like that. Okay, I know.
I mean,
There's
I think we have 3 7s over here.
3 7s where, do we have do we have 5? Wait, we're either gonna have 5 7s or a full house.
I have an issue with 7. You can't fire Georgia.
Someone write that down.
Okay, no,
Oh, no, it's got a board selected member at the bottom. Does cover.
Next speech. Oh, next paragraph.
But I agree, we still can't fire.
no.
No one might have the authority to, we won't.
I guess it's.
So how do you get rid of someone like me? Do we need
Right
to
here,
say-
the board selected member may be removed by unanimous vote of the other voting board
Okay.
members at a duly held meeting at which all remaining members are present.
All in favor? Oh,
You know, I actually kind of like that. You know, Roger and I had this conversation. I think in a paragraph on how to get rid of members is absolutely essential. Because sooner or later, you're gonna have somebody that's gonna want to be on the board for the glamour or the position, not really want to do work. I've seen it over and over and over happen. But my discomfort was with board members removing other board members instead of the person appointed, and I think 7 takes care of that. I'm a little uneasy about us getting rid of the 5th member, but I really don't see any other way to do that. If it's a simple way to do it.
well, partner language to this, in my view, is whether or not we keep the definition of misconduct. And I think that while we're talking about having some basis like for the removal, if we may not like this, I mean, we may agree with this or not, but I think we need to have some guidance. Because I don't think it can be a political decision. I just wake up today and I don't like somebody, I want to propose to remove them. We have to have some guidance, and this language in here could be it, and if we agree, so that's the partner language to this.
Where are you looking at this, the poor performance?
Yeah, it's official misconduct, page 3, the bottom of page 3.
Oh,
It's a definition. Whether we. agree with that
There are
language.
actually 2 different misconduct sections.
Okay,
Option 2 has some misconduct. And then option 3 has a copy and paste from the CSK2 definition of misconduct.
I see.
Option 2 included poor performance, I think, which is a slight variant on misconduct. So it's poor performance. Because and misconduct is, those are like 2 options of why you would get rid of the board member. Because obviously what Ken just described may not necessarily be misconduct. Just by showing up and not doing anything is kind of poor performance.
If we do definitions, I would like, either way we go, which is fine. It would be include, but it's not limited to it. It's just a catch all in there.
If we got a general idea of whether or not there's an option 1 or option 2, option 2 or option 3 or more. Or is this some sort of a hybrid? Because I want to put kids' notes.
Let me ask you about that, Ken. So while I understand what you're saying as a lawyer, as the non-lawyer looking at that, to me, that still opens the door to really subjective opinions about whether or not, I don't know, I don't like the way Roger dressed today. So I think we should just,
Okay,
how do we avoid that subjectivity
includes, but it's
based
not.
on the language that you just provided?
My concern is that there's always something when you have lists, there's always something
Yeah.
that doesn't make the list. And so I would say include, but it's not necessarily limited to. Does that help you at all?
No,
I get what you're after. I just wonder, is there a way we can find, is there some kind of language we can settle on that it provides us with guidance, but
so,
doesn't nail us to the wall in terms of we have to do it this way.
so you're trying to eliminate capriciousness, so it includes, but it's not limited to this list of poor performance and misconduct, so that would take out just matters of opinion, right? Do you need to specify that in some way? so it doesn't become capricious.
Okay. I think you're getting the point. I don't know, but that's a good, that might be a good way to do it. I think that if it goes beyond anything that's listed, we'll probably, we're gonna wanna make sure that we agree.
Again, this is, I think everybody has got, agreement that it's gotta be unanimous vote minus, what I call the independent board member. So, agreement, you've got, it's about as tight of an agreement as you can, and then it's really an agreement to recommend the removal for, 5 and 6.
Well, once we get a final version of this too, then we'll let our attorneys review it. And
Yeah,
see if they
they'll
have
get a
any-
chance to do that, but does that help? I mean, I don't know if it's, nothing, I don't know if we'll capture it perfectly either way, but does that help, Ken?
And I'm wondering if you want to leave it as a majority or it has to be unanimous.
That's what I was wondering too.
What is the where, go to that language.
Majority.
It's unanimous now. All other decisions are both majority decisions.
This is, unanimous. No, your forms, whenever you modify the forms, it's gotta be unanimous. Is there, I think, I wrote into the personnel policy, there might be some unanimous votes that are required for some personnel stuff, but,
Your option 2, if you
yeah.
scroll up, says unanimous at the top, but the next 2 paragraphs say majority vote. So we're inconsistent there.
Oh, wait. I'm
I think
sorry, I'm sorry
majority
to do
is-
that.
I think majority is important.
Okay, option 2. Okay. This one's got.
Unanimous, and then-
here.
Yeah.
Is that typical for it to be unanimous, or is majority?
Majority vote.
Majority is typical, okay.
So I think what we had here is where the board members. Consider whether poor performance or misconduct had occurred. So this is like a kind of a 2-step. Did poor performance and misconduct occur? That's a majority vote.
Removal.
Recommend, or
okay.
recommendation to remove. I
Yeah.
mean, again, these different options are you kind of border things around. We'll land on something concrete when once you hone in on it a little bit, but so that could be an option where misconduct and poor performance is determined on a majority, but recommendation to remove is a unanimous vote.
Like
Is that
The typical action is a majority, but I think if we're talking about something as serious as removing someone, I think it should be unanimous. That's my thought.
And again, now, so what I'm hearing you say is I could kind of go in and modify that last section a little bit to include sort of a 2-step process for you board members. Step 1, consider whether misconduct and poor performance occur. Step 2, consider whether or not the board would like to recommend or remove, depending on which type of board, if they're an appointed or chosen board member, right?
Why do we need 2 steps? I mean, if poor performance is what triggers the recommendation of removal, why do we have to have 2 steps?
Again, here, in this case, it was because the determination of poor performance or misconduct, the threshold is a majority vote. So you could have a scenario where you've determined that a board member is performing poorly, but you do not decide to recommend that they are removed. You could instead maybe decide to put your board member on a performance improvement plan, or I mean,
Corrective action.
you know, maybe just let it know from the board members that you'd like that board member, everybody thinks or a majority of you think that they're performing poorly. Again, there's a lot of ways you can go here, but I can write it in any array.
Well, the idea that I just heard over here, I think is important to think about too, is if we do have somebody unless it's really egregious, there's always the idea of giving somebody like a corrective action plan, so this is the
But then you're treating them like an
employee,
employee.
yeah, that's different, yeah.
And performance improvement or corrective action plan for a board member, that gets, in my opinion, that gets messy because
Too far.
they're not
okay.
an employee.
Yeah.
So, but the discussion on majority vote or unanimous is important because we conduct the majority of the business on majority vote. I mean, a majority vote for our most important decisions is sufficient.
Yeah.
So here's a thought. If we're putting bylaws together for board members and in this paragraph, we're explaining what will happen if a board member functions poorly. Is it appropriate somewhere, maybe in this document or somewhere else, to define success?
What is good for the company?
How does a board member know they're operating successfully? Or do they only find out when they're operating poorly?
It goes back to my concern with lists.
What's
I
that?
think that's my concern with lists. You start listing things out, it's always gonna be another level.
Well, yes and no. I think it's, you know, you think about anytime you do any new thing, somebody should be giving you some idea of what success looks like. People want to be successful. It's just often they don't know how. So, do we ever define success? And I think research would show organizations that define success experience more success than those who don't. And maybe you don't put that in a bylaw, but when you're onboarding a new board member, who tells them these are your expectations?
Well, do we have a position description for a board member? I seriously don't. If, you know, a position description for a board member. You know, but back to George,
For the most part.
but back to George's point about being successful, you know, do you define success as 90% attendance? Do you define it as coming to the meeting prepared and engaged?
I would, you know, one of the thoughts I had, and that's a great point, is if you think about the history of this and what we're trying to do here, it seems to me a real basic place to start for success is you're willing to understand and to implement the ordinance, right? Not sabotage it. Let's start there.
Maybe rather than individual position script or board, we write sort of a brief statement of what is expected of the board member.
Yes.
And that becomes the definition of success.
I like that.
So that
That's
maybe in the future, if there is ever an advertisement for a board member, so board members are expected to.
I love that.
So we
Yes,
just say board members are expected to in 10 meetings, be on time,
Well,
engage. I don't know.
I like it.
Go up to the paragraph above that last one. Just for any board member, go up to that one. Work requirements. That define,
What's that?
does that define what is expected?
The opposite of that, you mean, is success.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think I just have a philosophical grievance with, we always define the bad, but we never define the good.
Well, I don't think we should define the bad either, so.
Well, but, so just for discussion's sake then, I think we need to try to find a balance between subjectivity, being subjective and not subjective in this. And if we don't define it, you open it up to total subjectivity. If you define it, your suggestion is that it too narrowly defines it and it creates a list that we can't realistically meet. How do we find that balance?
I think if you're gonna define it, you need a broad definition. Rather than this.
Okay, but again, I know I'm kind of poking this a bit, but if you think about this in a different situation, it's like saying a guy's a good husband if he doesn't hit his wife, right? So you've identified if he doesn't do this really bad thing, he's a good guy. And I'm saying the opposite is true. That's not a definition of a good spouse, right?
I would say
It means something else. It means they are cognizant of the ordinance and they're willing to be here and support that or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you want to attract people to this position as a board member who want to be successful at it, to carry its mission forward, not just not hit their wife, right? So, does that make sense?
yeah, but I would counter and say that a bad husband is one who hits his wife. I never hit her. I left her out in a snowstorm. I never hit her.
But that's my point. If that's your definition, then you're just, you know, as long as you don't do the really bad thing, you're good. And I'm saying, no, let's shoot for excellence and let's define it. And then people know what to hit. Or at least, like Clayton said, some general definition, or I don't know.
Some set of expectations. So we've
Yeah.
got
Like
section
yes.
2.3 is board eligibility. Maybe when we go to 2.4 vacancies, or maybe before we do that, we go to 2.31 or a new 2.4 that says board expectations.
I like that.
Yes,
That new section says board expectations.
yes.
I can achieve that. Just to double check here on the removal. I do have a couple of open questions. Did you want to have a two-step process?
I'm not there
Okay,
yet. I still think that the person's performance is so bad that we have to take a vote on the poor performance. That should be a one-step process goes to the appointing. That's a pretty serious consequential act. Well, you're performing bad. You know, and you see the strain, tensions and everything else after that.
okay.
I'm a little draconian, I'm sorry, that's me.
That's,
No, it's
It's
good.
good.
Nothing wrong with that.
You feel like making one vote? One vote, okay.
Yes,
We got
one vote.
some buy-in now. Let's talk about, is that gonna be a majority vote or a unanimous vote?
Do you need a unanimous vote now?
I need a majority vote.
Well, that's a good question because
You can't ask
because
me to
it's-
vote,
it's-
right now today.
Does it, based on what you're describing, it means we vote on whether or not there is misconduct or poor performance. Once we have done that, that means we're automatically voting for them to be removed.
But I think that should be unanimous vote.
Then that, then it should be enough, yeah.
Well, no,
unanimous.
it can't be because they're.
They're
a voting member.
recused, they're recused from voting, is that a
Doesn't
conflict of
say that in
interest?
there. Doesn't say that person is recused from voting. So
You
then
know.
they can
Oh,
vote.
I think it does, and we do have a
Yeah, I'm gonna
section.
go down to the section that folks liked here under 7. With the understanding that we wanted to augment 7, possibly leaving in a list or not a list that we'll get to more, but it is a unanimous vote of the other voting board members at
Okay,
a duly held meeting. And so that clarification, I think, is probably the important one. Otherwise, if you had somebody who was just not gonna throw in the towel, you'd never get rid of it, right? If, so,
Well, till their term's up.
And you know, when it comes to water commissioner, we ask unanimous vote, so.
that's true for removal, yeah. It's kind of consistent. All right, so we've got that now. I guess, I did have two different, misconduct and poor performance sections. One right out of the tribal code and one out of, I plagiarized from somebody else's board rules. With, is anybody, I know you don't like the lists, it seems like Clayton kind of does like at least some amount of like clarifying lists. I'll do what I can here. I think when I read these poor performance misconduct things, they sort of strike me as like, yeah, those are no-brainer reasons why, and sort of sets the context, but that's me, maybe I'm
My sense is I like the paragraph here more than the one out of CSKG.
Well,
This is like, it looks like to me, only because this looks like it's criminal. Which one are we with the CSKG one?
okay, yeah, I'll go down to that now, we haven't sat looked at it too much. Okay. This official,
Yeah,
2-1.
it's sufficient criminal offense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, well, and again, I'm just trying to grab different products for your consideration here, so.
you like, well, going up, you like that poor performance paragraph. How about that next paragraph?
Here's the poor performance one, and the blacked out stuff is an idea that we had and then removed, so, not a two-step, I'm just gonna delete this now. I think we all settled on that. So that looks a little cleaner for you.
The hearing,
Yeah, I'm just wondering,
the hearing,
I just don't like that second paragraph.
why?
It's kind of writing us down a rabbit hole.
well, I think it gets, it's not the same, but it characteristically, to me, is similar to giving somebody an opportunity to defend themselves and then setting up a plan for,
I don't have a problem with the first sentence, but I don't like the second sentence.
In this case, I think that this alternative option to hold a hearing may invite the option for the board to have that hearing be more like personnel, private based. I don't know. Throwing that out there as a consideration, right? So that maybe you didn't have to have that difficult discussion, or you have to have the difficult decision in front of the public, but not necessarily. Yeah.
Well, does the offending board member, when you're bringing forward the concern and the claim, is the offending board member given the option to present information and counter point of view? Or is that when you do that in a hearing, or is this done in an open meeting in a public session? So, I mean, what if there was a health-related issue that was impacting attendance? You know,
right, it says any board member may assert, well, I assert, now, does this person have an option to respond?
Yes.
How do we do that?
yes,
Is there a due process?
yes, I think we would want to provide a due process in some way that is legal.
I think if we did something along the lines of what Ethan was suggesting, a hearing infers that it's a hearing, both sides, it's not one side. But I am concerned with the public aspect of it. You know, like you said, once this person has had serious health, I don't want, that's not the public's business, that's something.
Well, if we get to that, we could always do one of our executive session closes, and then the language is somewhere that says, you know, the privacy over, you know.
Yeah.
But going back to George's comment, I mean, who's gonna be reading this? It's gonna be future board members. And here's a situation where I think maybe we should be a little more precise in saying a confidential hearing, how's that? Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
whatever.
And I think also
Yes.
here where it's board members may choose, we should define that choice, like, how would the board members choose? Or that sounds to me like they would need to make some sort of a vote to choose. Or do you want to just say board members will hold a confidential closed hearing to better investigate? It's
Or-
like a mandatory step. And the reason that it may be not always necessary is you may have a board member who does something at a level where you don't need to have that.
Yes. Is it through consensus? You know,
It would be, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, but is it just a consensus to hold the hearing, or the alternative that Ethan means is that the offense was so egregious that it's like, no, why hold a hearing? It's so black and white, it's,
Well, we can maybe tie those two pieces together. The yellow part that says board members to consider whether poor performance in this kind of district through normal motion, the majority vote procedures, what are we voting? Maybe at that point, we're voting on whether we're going to hold a confidential hearing. And then hold the hearing. And then after that, take whatever action we take.
So would we need, in that second sentence, then it would be a new thought. Additionally, board members may hold, if you get rid of choose to alternatively. Additionally, board members may hold a confidential closed meeting. Does that make sense?
yeah.
But
This is back to a two-step process, by the way. We have just walked ourselves back. guys.
You're right.
But some offenses, you know, will you ever reverse yourself regardless of the information if the offense is extreme?
my buffers, like address that is. If you have a board member that says, no, I want the public to hear this. I don't want to have a closed meeting.
Yeah.
So I think that person has the right to break the waiver. That goes back to the open meeting laws.
Yeah, and we
Why
could,
don't we just say pursuant to the open meeting laws?
yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Keep it short.
Very pursuant to the open meeting law.
Future boards are gonna owe us baked goods for going through all of this.
I still think this could be a one-step process if you use this paragraph in the one step.
Yeah,
Okay, so this is how we implement our one-step process.
Do you agree that that step should include some due process?
Oh,
for the
absolutely.
person?
Absolutely, yeah.
So just for those information, my plans to leave at 4:30 may have changed. I need to go make a quick phone call and verify this, and I may not be leaving, so.
Well, we got page 3.
Yeah. Well, then we could order out for pizza.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so you're gonna take that and put it in under what you said.
I'm gonna try to clean it up, with the understanding you may want to change some things, if I didn't get it quite dialed in, but I will clean these section up. You'll have one piece of language instead of 7 options, and,
We're pretty much in agreement on option 7
yeah.
with the addition of that.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, I'm not adamantly opposed to a 2-step process. I just think one step is cleaner.
Yeah. All right, down to Article 3.
Quick, before everybody gets back.
Article 3.
Article 3, all right, so I talked to Clayton about this also. I don't think I had a comment here that under that I broached this to Ken with and Clayton. But my idea with these kind of boards is that you kind of wrote, well, first of all, I'm in agreement that there's no secretary or treasurer, that we just have a chair and vice chair. And then, because of the size of this board, and it's what it does, you know. So then, I think we have a chair now, but usually what I've seen too is then the vice chair rotates into the board chair. And so really you hold your election to elect the vice chair. And then also I think that chair position should rotate between a tribal appointment and a state appointment every other year. And the rationale for that is to show that we're being, we're not a affiliated entity. So that's my thought, and what I wanted to throw out there to preface this.
Well, vice chair doesn't want to be chair.
Oh, and if the vice chair does not want to be chair, then the option is for the other appointment or the 5th member to be the chair. So, and if that doesn't happen, then you have an election.
So does that imply then that the chair and the vice chair must always be one from the state, one from the tribe? Okay, so you can never have those two positions filled by the same entity.
So like next year, or I guess at the next election, Ken would rotate into being the chair, and we would elect a vice chair.
I don't like that.
Okay. I'm sure.
Only because then what if the composition of the board changes during that year, and then we're taking a vote, a decision-making opportunity away from a new appointee? I mean,
The way the composition is always going to change if somebody really gets thrown off the board.
or resigns, or dies,
Yeah.
or gets sick.
Yeah.
So I
Or is
exit,
kicked off.
or is kicked off, like he just said, but then you're taking, as a new board member, then you're taking the choice away from a new board person, regardless if it's state or tribal. Because you've made that decision in advance. I don't know. What do you about that?
Where are we at? We're on this election of officers for so I kind of discussed what I had thrown out to you when David were on the phone, that we rotate the chairs, we rotate through the chair, and that the chair alternates between a state and a tribal appointment every other year.
So you don't mean chair from meeting to meeting, as is up there. Rotating.
No.
Yeah,
that's not what
I
mean.
misunderstood
You can
Roger when he-
with it.
when he
Okay.
said this originally, so my apologies there.
But that's an option. though that is clearly an option to rotate from meeting to meeting. Back to the comment about not having a secretary or a treasurer. Can that sometimes impact what Ethan wants done? Only in this regard, Ethan, like if you have a treasurer authorize some sort of an expenditure. So if we eliminate a position, then are we impacting what Ethan needs? Or are we impacting the internal controls? So Clayton's chair, Ken is vice chair, you have no secretary or treasurer, then can they each sign each other's compensation? I mean, shouldn't you have somebody else who, like, is a secretary or treasurer, sign compensation so there's no conflict of interest? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Right now, you sign your own checks, right? Oh, that's right, you're not taking that.
I haven't taken any yet, and when I do, I won't be signing my own check.
I signed my own check once, because very, very uncomfortable doing it, now I'm getting up to talk with Murray. But I do think it's a good thing, you have to have somebody else sign my
Yes.
checks.
Absolutely.
But right now, it's you sign my checks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a dangerous thing to approve our own compensation, our own travel.
I was very uncomfortable.
Well, the whole, I mean, I don't know where we're at, but kind of moved on to discussion of the positions.
I had a,
Chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, or treasurer and secretary. I had a couple thoughts. One is for lack of a better reference, and maybe you've better the references as well. I've asked for copies of the positions of the tribal council secretary and treasurer, just for understanding what, I don't know actually what they say, so I'm gonna get copies of those and look at those. Two, when I read the duties here, they are a whole lot more administrative than I would have expected board member duties to be. And I think that board member duties are meant to be a lot less administrative, more governance oriented, and including things like signing. But that they're almost, while they're meant to be alternate officers, have limited duties, and almost all of these are really more administrative functions.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at in my head, and maybe I'm wrong about the way that's
No,
supposed
I
to be.
agree with you.
Which I like what's written, but that's my sense of where I thought officers would be in terms of board members, but that's, and in that case, then you could do it secretary, treasurer, or do both, but still really more limited definition of what those duties are.
And we have Marie, who spent our stuff to, we paid her to do that. You're getting some duplication, start going down this way.
Well, a couple of things about that. Marie doesn't look at anything. So there's no approval process coming out of Marie, and she refuses to take on that. Right? So we've had that discussion. She's right in her wheelhouse, which is like you send her papers, she makes other papers and sends them back to you. And second bit, maybe I misdrafted. These weren't really intended to be administrative roles, and so if possible, I didn't do a very good job of trying to explain it. What I really was looking for when I drafted this, because I was a little bit more in desire of this than other parts of the bylaws. So, and mostly what I really was interested in is having an audit function for board compensation. That's not in my office. Because I don't think we should be looking at any board compensation submissions, and I also don't think that the signing of the check process equates to looking at the board compensation. You know, they could need somebody to look at to like really see if things are being turned in the right way.
Well, my immediate thought there is. Signing is appropriate if you're talking about what you're, you know, as you put it, those audits. I think we need to talk about or think about the auditing that we're going to have done. Which I think would include an auditing of that. And I don't think we've ever talked about those audits and whether Marie is involved in that or we have to hire an outside auditor. We really need to have the audits done. And those shouldn't be done by board members either. So if it's that kind of thing you're looking for, we need to be looking at if appropriate in periodic audit functions and how to do that.
I do think we need a control function. Someone has to be improving expenses. I'm just not sure it should be, I don't touch what you guys. I think it has to be done just because we need control. But, you know, I think this is a little much. I'm just thinking my chair.
I do believe that we need to be very transparent, very accountable. I think there needs to be joint oversight. Ethan and maybe the chair, you know, they would have the best handle on the budget. And once we start assigning duties, like, and just as an example, just for discussion, where we're saying the treasurer secretary also serves to assist in ensuring the water engineer and staff follow through on board directives and serves as the board's primary reviewer of meeting minutes. That function right there, you know, if someone's going to spend that level of time, they should be compensated, in my opinion, for that time spent. That needs to be defined in some capacity. So whatever duties that we assign to the board positions and committees, should we take on the compensation discussion before we determine kind of the organizational structure? But board members should be fairly compensated. Ethan, it does not, I am not offended. I am not offended, Ethan, though I do know it's uncomfortable, but I'm not offended that you review my compensation request. You know, I mean, we need to have standards in this draft. The area from zero board compensation to this amount of board compensation, we have to have standards. I think the wide swing in board compensation to this point could flag an audit finding, because we're not consistent. Actually, it's not
defined.
well, it's a wide swing in the amount of compensation claimed. If it was only a couple $1,000 difference, to me, it's, oh, well, maybe, you know, maybe this is a difference. But when you have these wide swings, then it's like, wow, what's going on? You know, so we need to define.
I'm not offended either, but keep looking for approving our expenses, but I think it's a matter of structure. The engineer works for us. I just don't think it's quite proper that both consistent, our employees reviewing our expenses. I think it needs to be done at the board level.
Well, you said two different words that I think are important. One is approve and one is review. I think review is absolutely appropriate,
Okay,
but approve is not it. I think it's,
you're right.
I think it's being able to say,
Good point.
Yeah.
look, I agree that what you submitted complies with the boundaries we've set. If it doesn't, I need to push back and say, and then, so Ethan would say, Ken, what you submitted, if he believes it's appropriate, he would just process. If it's inappropriate, should probably go through the channels like the chair, and then let the chair address it, that kind of thing. But what I hear Ethan saying is, well, we don't have that role, but let me push back a little. We also had the idea of a business manager. But we've foregone that because you recommended we forego that and your office take on that function. That is part of the function of a business manager, and I think we need to make sure that there is a role for administration to play there. Not necessarily the authority over the board, but working with the board to be able to review and say, now this doesn't meet your own policy. Or this meets your policy, so let's just process it. If it doesn't meet that policy, then he's got to be able to come back, or whoever has got to be able to come back and say to the appropriate officer, say it's me or whoever's the chair, and say, look, this doesn't meet, and then we need to address it with each other.
Or is
That
that
would be
a
my.
treasurer role or secretary role?
Well, if you want it to,
Define.
yeah, if you want it to be, that puts the treasurer and or secretary in that much more administrative role,
Yes,
if that's what you want.
right, understood.
So relative to that though, you know, I guess a couple things. One is I haven't been on any boards that have a secretary or a director. So I'm really interested to see what the tribal council's definitions of what their
Oh,
roles,
my.
what their roles are, you know. But to me then, and like on our board of health, we have a subcommittee or a committee that's a finance committee, and then they look at those kind of things. But usually the chair of that committee though has got some financial background too. And so nobody on our, maybe somebody on our board has that capability, but we kind of all different walks of life from what I know. So, I guess I'm not sure how to implement that.
Great, you've been chomping at the bit.
Well, I just having thoughts, and I'm at that age, if I don't get them out soon,
Get
I might
out.
lose them, right? So, two things. I want to circle back to something Roger said before we got into the positions, but while we're here, let's go there. I think all of us have been concerned about review and audit. And I think a lot of this could be resolved just by adding a column under Article 4, you know, when you have that table of what we each received in compensation, as a business owner, there's a column missing, right? And I think it clarifies everything. So if you're looking at that, we've got our names and what we received and whatnot, but what's missing is the hours, right? The hours of time that were put in. And so if you look at this, it looks like, wow, one got more than another, but what you don't see is that one worked more hours than another, perhaps, right? Maybe served on more committees, was involved in more technical review. And then I think it provides justification. But that's missing on the table.
Well,
And
not only that, I mean, I don't even see Clayton's name on here, I guess, you haven't submitted anything, so,
No,
you know, I mean, is it a function of what's been submitted versus?
or there's that too, right? Versus actual time.
well, the other, just going back to that table though, first of all, this table doesn't belong in this document.
No.
That's
Right.
correct.
Everybody, okay, good.
That's correct.
We're just, it's for reference and we're just,
Yeah,
yeah,
Gotcha.
maybe it's something we need to have in front of us periodically for review. But it doesn't belong in this document. I appreciate it being here for
It
now.
was never intended to be.
Yeah.
The way I-
Permanent The way it function here, sorry if that was.
No. It's a mechanism for us to go back and
But
address 4.3 area of board compensation.
Yeah, appreciate it.
yes, but the one point it does raise, and let's go back to, excuse me.
Sorry.
Yeah, the one point it does raise, when you go back to the bylaws and you think about orientation, who's appointed and what the expectations are, is, did anyone ever say, you can claim preparation? Did anyone ever say that? Or that you could not to me, or you can claim time worked on X or Y. So you might put hours in here, but then it raises the issue, what is the hourly rate? The present compensation is only based on a meeting rate. I don't know what the hourly rate is. I don't.
Well, that hourly rate could be anything from 10 cents an hour to whatever, you know?
Totally, I get that.
Yeah, so I guess
I do get that.
when I came on, I was told by the DNRC that anything after 2 hours is probably considered a day's worth of time. So that has been my metric.
And I think that just goes back to, did we?
But
get
we
that
never
information?
had a definition. No,
Exactly.
So that's why we need a definition.
Totally,
Exactly.
totally. That is why. And so.
A definition of,
What
Compensation.
constitutes, when you would charge this $175?
compensation and reimbursement.
Yeah.
Yeah, but back to this table doesn't need to be here for,
No,
I mean, would,
no.
yeah, a blank maybe to help reinforce what we're doing, but not with the dollar amounts. in.
No, no,
Yeah,
no,
okay,
no,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
But we're talking about partnership.
Yep.
We're talking about the chairman rotating year to year, meeting to meeting. But what is clear is that, and no, the table doesn't go here, but what is clear is that the instructions provided to the state appointees were not translated to the tribal
Well, and
appointees.
see, I don't know, you know, because, and that's a good point too, though, Teresa, because what the board is now, initially, the NRC and the tribe split their costs independently, but
So we need,
are they still doing? No.
See, my guess is each of us probably got told something different.
Yeah, or nothing.
Or not.
or told nothing.
And so we just need to get that
Yeah.
language
Let's
consistent.
get it down, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it kind of brings up something else. I want to circle back to a good point you made at the very beginning of this section, which is up at the top with the rotation of chair and vice chair. And I know I'm changing the subject slightly, but I don't want to forget this. Okay, so my thought is, if we go back to that definition of success, right? I think, Roger, your point, and I think Ken, I've heard you mention this too, that hits at it, and I know that we're gonna have to tease the language to satisfy your good thoughts, but if you think about it from the public's point of view, one of their definitions of success is that when this board gets together and does its job, it's not skewed one way or the other. And so we have to be cognizant of that and make sure that we are doing some kind of rotation, or we will not be deemed as legitimate by the communities that we represent and serve. So I don't know how we do that, but I don't want to skip over that. I want to make sure we camp on that for a minute, because I think it's key to public buy-in in what we're doing, right? Which is what you were getting at.
Well,
Maybe it's co-chairs.
to me, meeting
road.
by meeting is too much. I think appointing or reappointing or re-elections once a year is minimum. Maximum, I wouldn't go beyond the terms. For example, if I've got a 4-year term, once my term is up, you're gonna replace, then you vote. But if you want to do it annually, do it annually. I mean, it's.
And it wasn't supposed to be meeting by meeting. It was supposed to be an annual thing.
That was my error, again, I wanted to throw out, I just misunderstood that.
No errors here. We're just having discussion, so you're good.
So I
So-
agree with Jen, and it may be that you get reappointed after 4 years too, or not, so who knows? But it was just optics, I guess.
Yeah, no, and
That's
I think we had that discussion and I think that at the next meeting, I think you were going to propose that it be on the agenda.
That's right, it was, yeah.
Yeah,
So at the next regular meeting, that we propose that we bring that up, and if you wanna re-vote at that point, then you do that, or how we wanna
That
set up, whether it's automatic or you re-vote. I'm always in favor of re-electing rather than making it automatic, but if you guys wanna make it automatic, I'm open to suggestion.
I circle back, Teresa, I didn't really understand your concern, not disagreeing with agreement, I just didn't really understand your concern with re-electing the chairman.
Well, if there was if you re-elected today, a chair and a vice chair,
Right.
we elected Clayton and you as the vice. And that if I'm hit by a car and I die and someone is reappointed, and if there's an automatic chair to vice chair transition, then the new appointee does not get to vote
Yeah.
for the chair or vice chair. So you're taking away the involvement of that new board member because the decision has already been made.
If we had voted, wouldn't it be the same result?
It's automatic, that person doesn't get a vote. If you vote, then they get an opportunity to. have
But if
a
it's
voice.
an automatic thing, then they
Oh, I
never,
see what you're saying, I see.
they never got, they don't get to vote,
Yeah. That's a fair point.
so.
Yeah, I don't know how to resolve that, but I think we really need to be sensitive to what you suggested, Roger, and however that gets accomplished. We need to really stick on that.
Well, maybe we go back to just a simple vote. Once a year.
Not to interject, but that does possibly preclude the rotation from between the state and tribal, which
well, no,
you may land on that.
you could still caveat it to say that, but
You say something exactly.
that depends. Right, that the chair position will rotate between state, tribal, and fifth member position or something.
Should the fifth member ever be in that mix?
Yes, why not? Sure, the fifth member is selected by everybody.
Well, I think, I'm just going back to optics, right? So I'm some Joe Blow in the community that's just again it, right? Because I just like to be again things. So,
That's country girls stuff.
So you're the fifth member, you're talking about your position?
yeah, my position. So if members of the board collectively select the fifth member, is that representing the public will?
Well, that fifth member
Is still voting.
Is a unanimous decision, so they have. full
And it's a
boards.
voting member. It's the non-voting one that I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think that through. If I were just a general resident of the county, how would I perceive that? Would I want it to stay strictly state and tribal rotating? Would you want to put the fifth in the mix?
I think they would perceive it as absolutely fair.
I want to follow that.
I don't need it.
I was really trying to make it so I would never.
Nice, right. I look at it like you're a voting member. That position's a voting
Yeah.
member. I think it's important to have the opportunity for the voting members to have that. It's the non-voting one that I think is probably not appropriate
Not
for a chair, but
eligible.
that's just, that part's me.
Don't know if you agree.
No.
And those rotations should be once a year. Is that what I just heard?
Well, you're
So, here,
limited.
there you go.
Yeah,
When we're
Okay.
sure.
I think that's fair.
Well, is it rotation or is it election?
Well, we can go either way.
Because if the board decides to rotate, fine, but what you're suggesting is that it it is required that it rotate that way.
Just the chair rotates? Or that the vice chair automatically becomes the chair, or that the whole election is a new slate?
I always thought it should be a new slate, but I'm, what's your preference?
Well, I guess my preference in recommending that was that it would rotate year to year from tribal to state, or it would alternate, just not rotate, it would just alternate.
So,
But you're limiting choice. When you're saying it has to be an A or a B, every other year you're limiting choice. You're predefining. So I can only vote for those two, or these two,
Or
or
Georgia.
I don't know. I just have to think about it.
I don't know either, but I just.
so you're wanting to do it because of, because of the political optics.
Yeah.
And I get that from a political optics point of view. I don't get it from anything that is reflected in the compact.
And see, I think it's the essence of the compact. Wasn't it negotiated so that both voices would be present? Do you see what- Meaning that by alternating, or however we want to term that, it's not just a matter of optics, it's to reflect kind of the beating heart of the compact itself. I mean, wasn't this all negotiated so that it wouldn't be all tribal or all state, but it would be joined? Am I not communicating?
No, I think I hear what you're saying, but from a board officer standpoint, should we from here forward predetermine who's going to be?
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Or each time it's up for. My only point of reference, I mean, it's my best point of reference is tribal council. You probably have others. When it's time for them to reelect officers, it's a clean slate.
Oh.
You're
I get
gonna
it.
end up with a new chair, and sometimes it's the same chair, vice chair. Quite often, it is an entirely new person in each seat across the board, every time.
Get it now. Now I get it. Okay.
What you're describing and what you're describing, I can't argue with it. From that sort of higher public political perception viewpoint of view. This is not, we don't want people to look at it and on the outside, and we agree. This is not a tribal board. This is not a state board, and we have said that.
Yeah.
How do we, so the question then becomes, how do we do this in a fair enough way so that people from the outside looking in can see that it's not a state board, it's not a tribal board, and it's done in a fair way. The absolute fairest, most democratic way is open it up to election each time. If you don't do that, if you do what you're saying, you're meeting that point of view on one hand,
Yeah,
but on the other hand, then you become sort of predetermined, that in a year, you're gonna be chair.
No,
There's no-
I don't think we're going that far.
Well, that's what
I think-
the proposal was.
I just heard that we should alternate when you're the tribal representative and when you're students.
Yeah, but then it's either one or the other, right?
Well, Georgia too.
Yeah,
She could be up both, candidate for both.
So one out of this.
yeah,
I,
so, yeah, go ahead.
excuse me. We're talking a lot about optics today, and we're talking about a joint board and not anybody representing one point or the other. But at the same time, we're talking about that. We've had for the past year 2 standards of compensation. Really, because you received instructions from DNRC on how to do this. I'll speak for myself. I received no instructions. The other part about optics is, you know, getting together and reviewing the documentation in advance, which you can argue is adequate preparation. But it can also be argued that the optics of that are that the state appointees do that. Maybe it's because you have time to do that, but I don't know about the optics of that when you do that or say that, and you can't have a third board member there because then we're in a public meeting law situation. So I think we have to be incredibly careful. I think the standards for compensation need to apply to both of us. We need to define them. I think that,
There's no question about that.
Yeah,
been
and
trying to
I think
figure
that
out what you were doing. I've been from day one, you know.
totally.
What are you doing?
Oh, I know, but, and then I think we need to vote on chair and vice chair every single year. I mean, the future boards, we don't know what their obligations are. We don't know about their time. We don't know about their training and their expertise. You know, but I hate to predetermine something when I'm no longer sitting here. You know, I'm just uncomfortable with that. Or they can go in and modify their bylaws. They can modify the bylaws, and poor Ethan has to survive through all of this.
It's fun and a pleasure to serve the board.
But, you know, it's like,
Well, I think, you know, if we go to a completely open election, our message to the public is we chose the persons we thought were best qualified. That's long and short of it.
I for one am
I think
glad
that's
my
right.
term's short.
I think that's right, and if it's annual, fine. And I don't, it's like everything I've ever done, I don't own this. I'm here to be a steward of this while I'm here, so if somebody wants to, you know, when the time is up, if I'm not elected as chair, I'm not elected chair, I'm not gonna say fake news and call the press and say that we, you know, I think it was a rigged election and all that.
Yeah, I got it. It was stolen.
Stolen, I'm gonna say the election was stolen,
Oh my
at least
goodness.
where I sit, no. But I guess,
We'll charge the water management office.
but personally, while I absolutely understand the optics point.
Yeah.
I'm personally in favor of an open vote each time we are going to elect officers, and if we have a gentleman's agreement that we're going to alternate, then we do that, but to make it formal that we predetermine that and we'll have an open vote and we give everybody a chance to be considered. Everybody here should have that chance to be considered.
You kind of convinced me, you know, I am worried about the optics, but I just think it's all we have to deal with. We'll deal with it openly and transparent.
And I would only add that if it gets to if those optics get to be an issue for the public, we're gonna hear about it. Yeah. Then at that point, we can try to address it, but I haven't heard anything. And I think we're so new that, you know, we want to get a few years down the road, and then I think, you know, it's gonna be people are gonna have an opportunity to see how we're doing. And I think what's most important to the public, I suspect, is not, I think because the compact already sets out tribal appointees, state appointees, and a neutral fifth, that's the balance. What the public's interested in is how well we implement the ordinance. that we do that in a fair way, yeah.
Just one more comment. Roger, you commented you haven't been on a board that had a treasurer or secretary. What I'm used to, and I think is an incredibly important function for this secretary, is once the minutes are approved, they're certified by the chairman and the secretary with an original signature and an approval date. And then those minutes then go into the file, but that every set of approved minutes have signatures on it by the chairman and the secretary. And it's more incumbent on the secretary, you know, in the initial review to make sure that the minutes contain everything. Because with the original signatures, then you're assured that those minutes were approved and they weren't altered.
Are they they're typically done though after the board adopts
Yes, after their approval.
what those minutes are?
Yeah, and you certify them.
The counter to that is, I understand that, I totally get that, it's good, I think that's good rationale. I just go default back to smaller board, like health board or whatever, or when I was on the Petroleum Tank Police Compensation Board, it was just then the chairman would sign the board minutes once they were approved.
Good. I think some,
We didn't have a secretary.
Yeah, we could, you add that to that function to the chair's position.
I think so.
That sounds good.
So, but I'm anxious to see what the secretary, the tribal council, they have the amount of governance they do is immense compared to what this is. So I'm just.
Well, I'll grab those. I've made a request for those. I just did that today, in fact. And so when I get those, I'll take a look at those and as long as I can share them with it.
Yeah, that might help us decide if we need a chair and a treasurer, and I think secretary treasurer, yeah. There was some language that somebody put in here about having an annual audit by an independent entity. And I think that would be good, and that may fulfill the need for a treasurer.
One thing, yeah, and the one thing on the audit question, and maybe this is something we can, Ethan help us with is, the state, we're funded by the state and the tribe equal. The state has its audit requirements and standards, and the tribe has its audit standards and requirements. I haven't heard anything from either one of them asking us to impose any audit standards, but we need to. So we need to figure out while we're looking at audit standards for ourselves, are there any audit requirements that the state and or tribe are going to impose on us? I think we need to ask that question and have them lay it out, spell it out for us.
Yeah.
That'd be my thought.
So we did get hidden kind of in one of the comments of the document that I sent out where the state and the tribes commented on these bylaws. There was a side comment where the state and the tribes recommended some sort of a GAAP, general accounting, and
It's like.
something procedures,
Oh, yeah.
certified GAAP, certified accountant to review and report on our budgeting and expenditures.
We can do that. My additional question though is, are they going to have any audit requirements for us? And if they say no, then it's no, but I want to make sure we cross that T and dot that I. And then if their recommendation is that, then yeah, we can, we should take a look at that and decide how often that's going to be.
The expense on that will be driven by how we land, and we're working right now to figure out how our budgeting is going to happen here. Although you won't see the table of board compensation in these bylaws, you will see it in our general budget.
Yeah,
Along with all of the compensation for every employee who works here, every piece of office furniture we buy, the whole shebang
That's
will be part of our office budget.
Yep.
Whether or not we organize that in a QuickBooks platform or something else, we're working through that, but we are intending to make it so that GAAP type of audit will be cheaper because we're organized. And
The comments that, and just additional final point on that, the comments that were made then by the tribal staff. I think that's important, but I think we should, in writing, ask the tribe and the state if they have specific formal recommendations for how we approach audit and audit our audit. And do they have any audit requirements, and get something back in writing? That way we're covered. And then we comply with what they want and we go after whatever auditor, because their staff, those staff comments, they might be right on. And perfect, but I want to document that formally. That'd be my recommendation, and we can't take action on that today. If you need action on that, we can do that at the next meeting, but that's my general suggestion for how we approach with audit requirements, which we haven't talked about.
Maybe you should put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Well, you can all tell that I didn't leave at 4:30. My plan changed. We were scheduled to go from till 5. It is 5 o'clock. So what is the wishes of you to continue for a while or? Oh,
I'd like to go for at least a half hour.
okay. Yeah, here we go. Okay, let's go.
I'd go to 6.
Okay. All right. And
7 if there's pizza.
Call, you better call Stagecoach.
I know. 7 if there's pizza or fettuccine.
Can I go back to 3.1? Is this where maybe we had a new 3.1? We use Georgia and Teresa's idea. This is board expectations. Is that where we can put that? So repeat it.
yeah,
Oh, should we, 3.1, is that where we should put the paragraph where board expectations are?
oh,
Have a new 3.1 just as an introduction.
3.1 board expectations.
Yeah.
It's something real generic.
No list.
Go under the. Under the.
I was looking at actually, the new 2.4. The 2.3 is board eligibility and then following that.
Okay, that works, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good stuff.
Put it there.
And just bump the numbers up. That was my thought.
That works.
So, I guess getting back, we're on 3.1, it's the board chair, board vice chair, I guess that's all good. We can, and secretary, we can. I think we can obviously the board chair and vice chair, we need.
Chair and vice chair, and I think we've got a continued discussion on whether or not we have a treasurer and or treasurer secretary and what those duties are.
Yeah. And, so I guess I would then into the election and stuff. I appreciate all the discussion we've had. And I think I'm on board too with everybody else that it's just that election annually. You know?
So you do have something akin to a flat election spelled out in 3.1. Or excuse me, 3.3 board position elections. In the previous section, it says annual. And this process may or may not meet the board's desires, but it is a nomination arrangement. The nominee has got to accept the nomination. There's a vote. if any language here needs to be changed, happy to do so.
Is this where you want to say that it's going to be annual? Or is that already covered
We go up, it's frequency of term 3.2 as once per year during the board's first or second meeting of the year, board positions will be determined and revisited. Absent request from the board to make changes, there is no mandate to change board positions, and no position has a term limit. So if you want to hold the elections, basically this allows you to just do the status quo if you want to, or not.
So when we say once per year, do we want to put a month on that?
I have your first or second meeting of the year.
Well, it's calendar year. I think,
Sure.
Is that what we're talking about? So I think at this point, we could, if you want to do it this year, yeah, to finish out the year, we can do that. So at the next meeting, we can tackle that. So is that what is meant there?
Does the board have a fiscal year?
We have roughly determined that our fiscal year would be the calendar year. And we got a lot of support from our payroll folks. The tribes use 1 year that is different than the state's fiscal year, so it's not like we're going to benefit from going on to one of those particular years. For us, for the tax purposes and payroll compensation purposes, the calendar year is perhaps the most efficient. This is your decision, though. So you got a recommendation to adopt it. This doesn't have to be in this section, it's in the lower section, but
Good, so we define it later on.
yes,
Good.
yes. So here we have once per calendar year, and at I guess maybe this first calendar is not needed. Sorry. And then at the first or second meeting of the calendar year. Does that make sense, or do we need? Yep.
I think that's fine, but I would say board positions will be elected. And rid of and revisit. It's kind of wordy.
Well, the and revisited is in case the board
don't
doesn't want to do anything. You just revisited them and you just decided as a group, let's just. And I can tell you from some personal experience on a board where we had attempts to rotate chair, it would, the status quo option was useful. So, for what that's worth.
I don't like the second sentence. I mean, it's fine. It's not saying the wrong thing. It's just, I don't like how it's worded. I would change it to I would state it definitively. There is no mandate to change board positions, and no position has a term limit unless there's a request.
I don't even think there needs to be anything else.
There's no.
Well, there's a conditional
no.
statement, right?
And no.
Absent request from the board to make changes. Doesn't that imply unless the board requests to make a change?
And no position.
It's just, when you make a conditional statement, the first statement in a sentence, it's hard to remember what the point was.
Is that close?
There is no mandate to re-elect or change board positions. Elections only occur when the board chooses to. I like that. That's much clearer. Is that saying the right thing, Ken?
So we're talking 2 elections instead of 1. First, we gotta choose to make a position change, and 2, we gotta vote.
I just wanted to flip that bottom sentence, right? Instead of starting with the conditional phrase, you say the definitive portion first. There is no mandate to change board positions and no position has a term limit. Absent request from the board to make changes, or unless there's a request from the board to make changes. You see what I mean?
Sorry. That,
It's just a preference, but I think if you're gonna make a point, you make your point,
No, no,
and then you give the
yeah.
condition. Does that make sense?
I agree, I agree,
Okay.
just, you're making it a double decision there. I would just take, there is no mandate to change board positions, period.
Oh. Even easier.
And no position has a term.
Okay, that makes it even simpler.
that. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We move on from that spot. You have to, you're kind of right, you have to revisit it. You either have to decide to have elections or decide not to have elections.
I would go with the term rather than elected. The term says you will have an election.
So go back to determine.
If we just, yeah, I would just go back to the chairman. If we decide that whoever's chair is doing a wonderful job, we don't need an election.
Board positions will be determined when we're visiting.
Yeah.
Okay, good, yeah, all right. And
Comment, I would have said revisited and determined. But it's okay.
we can do that for you.
Sorry.
Makes sense.
That makes sense. Yes,
No, that makes
and determine, that's perfect.
Okay.
That's Ken's training.
That's right.
So here we've got the board position elections. To select or reaffirm board members' positions, an agenda item for board positions is noticed at a regular board meeting. That seems safe, right? For each position, the meeting floor is open for board members to nominate or reaffirm a seated position by fellow board members. Nominees must accept the nomination in order for their name to stand for the position. Or remains open for nominations until no more nominations or reaffirmations are made. The nominations have been completed, the nomination process is declared closed. For those individuals who have agreed to let their names stand are now candidates for elected or election to the position. I don't want to read all this, but I just figured this would seem important enough to you. Okay, that's how you get nominated. And this was, this had been changed to open voice vote now, instead of, originally it was written so that you could submit a closed, just a name in a hat, right? So this is shifted to make it more open process. You can vote for yourself. And the candidate with the most votes is selecting a position. Since there's 5 people theoretically, unless there's an abstention, there should be a tie, but who knows? I watch too much Survivor to know anything's possible. I'm okay with it. Okay. It seems like we sorted this out. How you get your positions, except for the, whether they're,
Vice chair, vice change.
oh, yeah. It's a good thing I do. So here on the committees and or work groups. You have a preference on what you want to call them? You want to call them committees or subcommittees, work groups? Are they appointed by the chair and the vice chair, or is there some other way to appoint committee, work group people?
A lot of times we've been volunteering for it.
Yeah.
We've been volunteering, but it's still appointed this, hasn't it? No,
I can appoint you if you want.
no, it's okay.
I think we've all spoken up, everybody's volunteered for the most part, so. And I'm not sure if you want the chair appointing.
I think you guys did it in consensus, actually. I want to say that that's my recollection.
I think people volunteered without consensus or.
Yeah, we've kind of been doing it that way, continue, I mean, the question is, do we want to make it more formal, and if so, how?
If you make it more formal, then are you then? Because when work has been done, like on our local and different things, that hasn't been noticed, right? Public meeting knows, but, right? No, right, has it, Roger?
We have made some shifts in this particular topic that read.
We weren't cognizant about open meeting laws when all that was going on.
But do we need to,
We will have to, once we create committees and work groups, when they meet, they're gonna have to follow open meetings.
so it's the difference then.
Going forward, yeah.
It's the difference than an appointee versus a volunteer. Is that the difference? Is this more formal, like appointing, which means that it's noted in the minutes, there's a future scheduled event? Is the difference?
Regardless of how you elect your subcommittees or work groups,
They gotta follow. open
it's
meeting.
gotta be an open meeting.
So we
Yeah.
just did it because we didn't have this. Got it.
Right, we just said, you're done.
Yeah, but you still get to choose how you want your work groups or committees to be named or
Like the May.
How about saying committee membership could be by volunteers or appointees made by the board chair?
Yeah.
That gives a little more flexibility, makes it a little more formal.
That's good.
The other. The other thing to consider is work groups and, committees. Yes,
Bless you.
notice, there are notice requirements. And minutes have to be kept. But we do not have to, and we can, the meetings can be open for public observation, but we do not have to take public comment at those. That's
and
my,
you can't make decisions either.
you can't
So-
make decisions, so.
Well, okay, so that orange sentence say must meet and operate consistent with the board's open meeting requirements.
Oops.
Just leave that.
That,
Yeah, but I would have started off with committees and work groups must meet. Or we just.
And are we, do you want committees or work groups? Let's just make a decision here.
Are they two different things or are they synonymous?
I think it's just a word.
I think you can say both committees and our work group, because today we're in a work group session. It is not a committee. Committees I see as something that's standing, that's going to be work on something for a period of time.
Okay, that's good to define that. So,
That's in my mind.
yeah, that
What do
makes
you
sense.
think?
No, I like that. I think,
Wouldn't,
Is there a board committee, but then does a work group imply that you're working along technical staff?
I was gonna say, wouldn't it come back down to the open meeting, you'd have to have. Well, in our case, you have to have a quorum for an open meeting, that will be in a true meeting, making a decision. So could 3 people meet and it not require to be an open meeting?
What I
I look back and when we were doing some of that stuff, I think Georgia and Teresa and I were all on the committee, you know, and that's not a quorum.
well, it's,
Is that an open meeting? Would that require us to be an open meeting?
I think it would, but I think what we want to do is probably have a little more discussion on the open meeting law requirements in another work session. Now, what I would do is go back and revisit the memo that came from our attorneys. And there may be questions from that, but I think we look at that and a lot of information is in there. And my understanding of it is now is that if a work group or committee, for example, is working on that is substantive for the purposes of the board, then it has to fall under those open meeting law requirements. And I think they're almost all the same as a regular meeting, except for committee and work group. We don't have to have public comment. Participation in the terms of observation, but we don't have to allow comment. The comments are then required for our regular meetings. The interesting thing that I saw and read in the open meeting law requirements is that the constitutional language does not require comments. But it's notice and public participation. All the other requirements associated with open meeting laws have come from case law.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say. Case law does require comments.
so I was thinking like when we were meeting in work groups, we were not, the purpose was not to come to a decision on anything.
Yeah,
We were to bring things for the board to decide upon, right?
We made a recommendation.
We made recommendations. So under open meeting law, if 3 board members are meeting in a work group to develop recommendations, that does not need public comment,
not public comment,
but it needs to be noticed.
noticed, and there needs to be an opportunity for people to observe.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, something.
And then minutes have to be kept.
Minutes have to be-
Minutes have to be kept, and those records need to be made available to the public if they want. That's my understanding.
So I really don't think we need to get into defining committees and work groups, because we just said, you gotta be consistent with the board's open meeting laws, and that's where your definition is.
Yeah.
Okay, simplify.
Whereas for me, well,
Just so somebody makes sure agenda's out on those notes, the differences between community and work group.
Ethan had a comment.
As someone who makes your agendas, I don't really know what the difference is between the community and the work group.
Yeah, I don't.
I don't think we need to.
Okay,
It's just the open meeting laws apply, they just apply.
They apply to both, but fundamentally, there can be a difference
Sure.
between a committee and a self-directed work group or work team.
Sure.
Working on the definition.
Yeah, so they. If we're gonna use two different terms. I don't understand them. I think they're different. Or are we always just a committee, or is a work group a couple of board members and technical staff? Asked to solve something, I don't know.
My point is, the open meeting law treats them both the same.
Yeah, I guess, but if we're having, if we need to understand what a work group is or committee is, if there is a difference,
So the
then maybe we
definition,
need to define them. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't. The definition for committee technically is a group of people appointed for a specific function. So if you're volunteering to do something, you're technically not a committee because you're not appointed. So let me look up work group. A work group is a group within a workforce that works together. It's a terrible definition. A group that shares data via a local, oh, never mind, that's a different thing. A group within a workforce. So if you're volunteering for something, I would say you're a work group. But if you've been appointed, say, by the chair to do something, then you're a committee. Does everybody think that sounds right? And do we need to make a distinction? Ken says no.
But we've made the distinction above where it can be made by volunteering or appointment. I don't know.
I think if we want to define the difference between a work group and a committee, we can do that. I think what Ken is saying is that for the purposes of open meeting requirements, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
When we are
Understood.
doing those functions, we still have to comply. Now, are there nuances to that? There may be, and I think that's why we need to have another full discussion on the open meeting law requirements for all of this. Because what I'm telling you is my understanding of it from my research on it, but we need to come together on that and be on one page for that. It's my thought.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you left out a must after committees and workshops. Must meet.
I can't quite hear you, kid, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Right there, where your cursor is, after the word work groups, put in the adverb, is it must?
No, one down. There you go.
Okay, and you guys can think about this, whether or not you want me to retool this language for elections to specify if there's a difference.
Say it again?
If you want to leave, so this section, it's important to designate how these committees and work groups operate with the public meeting rules, but it's also good to designate how they're organized. And if there's not any functional difference between the work groups and the committees, then we can leave the language the way that it is. If there is a desire to have work groups be voluntary, appointed by volunteers, and committees to be appointed, we can make that distinction. It's really what you want.
I kind of like that, the introductory sentence. And we create committees and then work groups, volunteers can volunteer to be work groups, but both shall be subject to the open meeting requirements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
That's good.
I'll retool this later.
You could, committee membership is made by appointments and work groups or volunteers, something like those first things.
I always figured that one of the 7th levels of hell was to have to edit a document in front of a group of people. So, you know, what you're doing, Ethan, is.
Right, you're doing a marvelous job, Ethan.
If Dante wrote that book again, that would be another level right there. So,
All right, it's 5:30. Are we done? Or are we gonna?
No, we
keep
said
going?
6.
Oh, somebody said, all right,
We
said pizza.
We
All right.
said 6, and then we said.
6 or 7.
7.
Okay. I'm just pointing out. Keep you all honest here.
6 or so. Good.
Well, we should be perhaps-
6, but I don't want to change on the dark.
Yes.
Well, I want to be respectful of others in the room here that have
Oh,
kids that have to
yes.
commute to Missoula. You and.
Oh,
we
you're
don't.
You're right.
So
No,
Are we doing good, guys?
no, you're totally right.
how are you guys? It's really cold. and You gotta drive to Missoula. How's everybody's cars?
I think the state folks know they can bail once they come up.
Yes.
Missoula.
All right. We're calling it at 6. All right.
You got, that's a hard 6.
Yes.
Okay, so board compensation. So. We did get some feedback from the state and the tribes about this section. I did try to incorporate. Some of their language, let me see here. Oh, no, sorry, I just built it right here, sorry. My apologies, but it isn't.
4.3.
This is different. Oh, no, oh, there you
Well, we should tackle this bit first, right? And I don't want to skip over board compensation.
So where are we at? 4.1?
4.1, let's do 4.1 right now.
Okay.
I believe this is directly out of the compact, which is some of the feedback I got from the state and the tribes that we should. Cite directly this language or out of Article 4.
That's why I always thought that, I always wondered if you guys were using, if the tribal appointments were using federal rates or state rates or what. I knew that ours was going to be state rates, and I wondered if there was going to be a difference between compensation methods. So this is a good place to figure it
This
out, I guess.
Well,
This is a good place.
It's just interesting because when I started, I didn't even know if there was compensation. And then later on, I was told you should check into it. And so it was funny because when I checked with the tribes, they were like, well, check with the state. And when I checked with the state, they're like, check with the tribe. And so it was like, check with mom and dad, right? So I just kept going back and forth.
So they are different. So they are different.
Well, no, what I was told eventually, maybe this is just a good place to start the conversation and we can tease it apart from there. But here's what I was told. Maybe we could all compare notes that, and according to the state, if you are a state representative, for instance, whether you work an hour or you work 12 hours, they'll bill $175 for the day, right? So I was told, you know, for each meeting, you would bill $175, half to the state, half to the tribe, and I did that. I had to do 2 expense sheets, and one went to the state, one went to the tribe, and then it came in. So I can only imagine, we've probably all heard different things. I mean, we're brand new, right? We don't know how this works. So I don't know, to answer your question, if there's a federal rate for the tribes. I think there was discussion about that, but I was never given formal instruction on how to bill. And I checked multiple times before I ever wrote up an invoice. So, you know, I think after checking with both entities multiple times, and double checking that I had done the first invoice correctly, I went with that. But this is appropriate then to define it
It
now,
is.
right? Because the next, you don't want the next board to have to go through that. so.
No.
So I guess the question then goes to Ethan, do you have a line item in your budget for compensation?
Yes, so the state and the tribes, to my understanding, did designate the $175 meeting rate. And you guys did never quite formally decide that that's what Georgia's rate is. I think it was assumed that it would be the same.
Now's your chance.
But yeah, well, that's what we're doing here. You just have to convince 4 people.
Well, I think it's there's a meeting rate, and I think that's set,
Yeah,
175, so I think we go with that. It's the rest of the compensation that we need to talk about, how we approach mileage per dime expenses.
Yeah. And
well, and what constitutes a meeting, or what constitutes a billable day, or whatever you want to call it.
Because you had heard it had to be at least 2 hours,
Yeah,
right? And
right.
that I had not heard till you mentioned that. So, yeah, there's some, it's fuzzy.
Yeah.
And then the tribal guidance is the daily rate includes preparation, the
Well,
meeting rate, excuse me.
I think the compensation is set at 175 per meeting. Is intended to include prep time. Now, where that comes from, I think, is out of the compact, is that correct?
my understanding is that came from an email from the lieutenant governor.
I think this tribe and the state agreed on it, whether, I'm not sure what the mechanism was, but they agreed on that. Compensation set at 175 per meeting is intended to include prep time. So I think that was the way it's worded. Sounds to me like it's targeting these meetings and our regular meetings. So the question you're asking is, do we apply that to work sessions, work groups and committees and how they're going to function? And I think that, if staff are involved, they're going to be paid, whatever the board members are involved. The question is, how does this apply to board members? I think that's where we're at.
Yeah.
I think so.
And we have some options. There's there's these base meetings. Then there's the workshop, staff interviews, technical assistance meetings. Then there's related, option 3 is maybe the more one-off, but if you go to a meeting by some farm bureau that's related to your efforts here at this board, maybe that should go. I don't know. You have to kind of make those decisions on which meetings need to be here, and they're written additively, so it's not like you have to choose only workshops, interviews, and technical assistance. You just have to include whatever group of meetings you would like in your bylaws here.
Question, so it's a new definition, is that the meeting compensation is limited to 1 meeting rate per day per board member, and rates are intended to include meeting preparation? That's what you got from Lieutenant Governor?
I gotta remember if that's from the lieutenant governor or if it was written in the. That's where I got it. Karen, you have to remember where that specific order came from?
I believe that comes from the, email really.
Okay, so, sorry.
The question then is, if I spend 2 days, 8 hours a day, getting ready for a meeting, that is included as the one.
Yep. That's what it's intended.
I have no strong opinions except that it's defined. That's all. So we define that.
So the question standing yet is, of course, regular meetings are clear. What other meetings are we going to apply that rate to? 175 a meeting. So at this point, I don't think it's by day, I think it's by meeting. except you can only have one meeting a day, be paid for one meeting a day.
I will make a bit of a plea that I do need occasionally board members to come to my office and help me with things, like interviews, and Robert has recently come to the office and provided very useful work, on development, domestic allowances. Those, I wouldn't want to do anything to jeopardize that opportunity for me in my office, so just throwing that out there.
So let's do this. So we agree that regular meetings, that meeting applies, right? Or so committee meetings, is going to apply to committee meetings?
I'd say, I guess I got all of these, I think, me, it applies to all of these, we're all putting in time, I mean. This $175 a day is cheap, I mean. Today, with preparation, it could have been an 10-hour day, you know, that's $17.50 an hour, that's nothing compared to what we're paying. We're putting 8 hours in on the bylaws, I mean, compared to what our attorneys are charging, you know. I think we're providing some pretty valuable service setting this thing up. So I guess I don't, and Georgia puts in, or Teresa puts in, God, that spreadsheet you created for reviewing those candidates was amazing, you know, that was a lot of work involved with that. So
do
I
I,
have no problem compensating somebody for doing something like that. I guess is what I'm saying.
I agree that those types of settings, as long as it's defined and people are devoting valuable time.
Well,
And I think that'll get reviewed too. I mean, you know, we have these, either Ethan will review it and then you sign the checks or the chairman signs the checks. There's, you know, somebody can say, hey, can you really do this? You know, or not. So,
I was just trying to step through the different types. You're sort of, we need to do all of them. So what is all of them?
well,
So are we going to define, I mean, Teresa's always define them. So do we want to list? As much as Ken doesn't like list, do we want to list what types of meetings this going to apply to? Or we just say any work that we do, it applies to.
well,
And go by, you know, or honor on the honor system.
Mr. Chairman, if we, you know, the low hanging fruit to me is like option 3. So if somebody attends some public meeting, some gathering or conference, isn't that the same meeting compensation where it's limited to 1 meeting rate per day? And then with the other 2, with option 2 and, well, I guess then you'd only be defining option 2 where you're talking about meetings with the staff of the Office of Engineer or interviews, workshops, or technical and administrative.
Yep.
And is that an hourly rate based upon the meeting rate per day? I mean, that's,
So I do think we're stuck with this word meeting. That we can't do something that's like an hourly arrangement. I didn't see anywhere where the meeting had to be a certain length.
I thought there was some chatter about a meeting is at least 2 hours.
well, that's, yeah, we heard it could even be 1 hour.
Oh, okay.
Under the NSC, but yeah, that's,
Oh, okay.
you know, so maybe, I don't know, so that's the question, is do we want to set a time duration for what a meeting constitutes?
And I think part of what you just said is important. I think, do we want to set, and I think that's where we're at, is we've got the authority to set what this is. Even though there are some conditions that are being imposed by agreement between the state and the tribe, 175 per meeting. The rest of this, I think, was up to us to decide. Yeah.
So I'll just toss this out to discuss. I haven't been involved in a meeting yet that didn't involve several hours of getting ready for it. Right? I mean, that's just the nature of this, like even the interviews that I helped Ethan with. There were hours put in reviewing applications and cover letters and social media profiles of each candidate. So the interview itself didn't, you know, each individual interview didn't take very long, but the amount of time we put into. Well, Kayla, how long were you and I scoring candidates and looking through, right? That was quite involved in, and you did an amazing job at that. So I can't think of anything I've done yet where we just were in and out in an hour and it didn't take time before. So I kind of hate to define a meeting hourly rate because I don't know if that ever actually,
Well, I don't think we can. We're set at 175.
okay.
The question is, how many, and we can only do it once a day. The question is, in what other types of meetings? I mean, if you have a meeting today, it's 175. If you have a meeting tomorrow, it's 175. So what other meetings? So this meeting, regardless how much prep time we put into reading this and it's 175.
Yeah.
How long it goes and again.
What's that?
How long it goes, but I mean, we can establish what defines a meeting, a bit of time.
Yeah,
for what
That's, we can do that. What is a meeting? Is it 5 minutes? Is an hour? I mean,
Yeah.
if we met for 20 minutes, are we gonna say, oh, that's 75? I'm not opposed to setting at least a minimum, like an hour.
I see what you're saying. There's 5 minutes of your life you're not getting back from, you're just, you know, going on.
But the rest of the compensation is mileage, time, those things. That's not set. We can set that.
Well, I was told on mileage and per dime that at least I was given guidance by both the state and the tribes that it was to use the federal rate. Did no one else get that? No one else got that?
I don't know that I think that's probably their guidance in lieu of any other rules. I think we have to come up with that.
I think it should be the federal rate. Don't you?
I don't.
The mileage is the same for federal and state, that's
Okay,
So-
No, that's my take. So Ethan, is that right? Is that?
We have a standard rate that we use for mileage, that's usually what we're.
No, what I'm asking is. The meeting rates were set. None of the other compensation rates have been set. We're coming up with that,
Yeah.
correct?
Okay, but then Clayton, just so I understand, because I obviously don't, then what you're saying is that then everything essentially constitutes a meeting. Right? Is that what you're saying? So if someone comes in and
That's what Roger's saying.
No, I'm saying we need to figure out what that.
okay,
So.
Yes.
So either everything is, or we define it more clearly. And
Right,
so the
right,
question is, how are we
okay.
gonna define what those meetings are? We know what the regular meetings are. So then what else, what other kind of meetings are we going to apply the rate to? The 175.
I'm experienced, just to know, with Mission Valley Power, there is a meeting rate established for utility board members, and the meeting is defined as 4 hours in duration. So it takes a full 4 hours, you get one rate. If it takes 1 hour, you get one rate.
Or 8
But-
hours.
But anything beyond 4 hours, then there is an additional hourly allocation added to that meeting rate. If you come in and you do something outside of the meeting, then there is a hourly rate of like $37 or something per hour applied for technical assistance. I just, for example.
Yeah, it's a good example. Have we ever been over 4 hours?
We might today.
You guys routinely meet 4 hours?
Oh,
But that's a, but that's a meeting, but those are, but my point is, as my understanding is, the meeting rates are set.
so,
It's the rest that we need to, like,
yeah, so
so what are we gonna apply the meeting rate to? One, and two, what other things are we gonna agree we should get compensated for? Right? Yes.
Maybe, we go with definition 1. But then we add in with chair approval, we add in 2 and 3. Maybe approval is not the word. Something like that. Just kind of a board, so it'll check.
Okay,
that's, approval's not a bad word. We chair approval for 2 and 3, that's.
Is the chair going to be having to
That's a good,
approve all of those?
Well, I think that comes at the board meeting.
We'll just keep it simple. The answer is no, so go ahead.
that's a good thought. though. I like-
You know, our committee meetings are set up at our board meetings. Our committees are established at the board meetings. So those are essentially appointments.
See, I'm kind of stealing back over here. It'd be nice if I could, initiate meetings for board members without having to go through the chair of this. And you could get compensated.
So maybe lump 1 and 2 together, or 3 be optional.
Or give the engineer the authority to call a board meeting, a board member to. That constitutes. That's not the original direction I want to head that.
Let me give you an example. So I came down this morning and then we had a meeting from 12:30 to 3 o'clock, basically, on trying to, with all the tribal staff and the state staff, trying to pound out this development domestic allowance, put some sideboards on it. And so that when it's ready, then we can bring back to the board, you know. So I think there's gonna be a lot of value in that.
Absolutely.
Well, you got a little bit of host because if we keep this like 1 meeting per day,
Well, I know,
you know, so you ended up working a whole lot
Yeah,
longer.
2 different meetings, you got 175 today
yeah,
for meetings.
yeah, but I mean,
Other
I'm using
compensation.
that as an example. If I'd been down here yesterday.
But
You know, that there should be some compensation for that.
Yeah.
It's gonna make your life a lot easier when it comes to the board.
But it seems like just, it's not a formal meeting, but it is expertise that accomplishes the work of the compact. I'm comfortable with compensating for that. Why cannot we not compensate based on an hourly rate? Because then you only get your 1 meeting rate per day, but that's technical assistance at an hourly rate based on the request of the office of the engineer.
Yeah. So, maybe that's why the DNRC threw out that 2-hour increment. I don't know, you know, that's just what I was thinking. So maybe you can go something like that, a minimum of 2 hours, or a minimum of 3 hours. So,
How would that work?
well,
I'm not challenging, I'm just asking.
yeah.
Well, or
Well, I guess it would work because I volunteered at the last board meeting to be on that, to help these guys work through that, so I just track my time. I mean, I guess I'm so used to being a consultant that I track every 15 minutes of time, you know, it's so ingrained in me now.
That's who I.
Yeah,
time
it's,
studies.
but it's not, Yeah, it's just simple, and you can put it in a ledger or whatever, but I usually just enter it on my expense sheet that day, so I don't forget it.
I just think long-term, as we're discussing this, we need to think about all of the responsibilities of each board member, the office of the engineer, the other staff. I think however we structure this, simple is better, right? I don't want this, however we do this, I don't want it to get complex to where it's one more onerous task, right, that you gotta compute. It should be simple. So I think less is more here. I do like the idea of having a rate, having it apply to as much as you can. But I do want to be fair to folks and respect their time and the expertise you're putting in. I think a lot about you, Roger, when it comes to this, because your expertise, especially with regards to these permits and the permit process, has really helped move this forward. And I think about Ken's expertise as an attorney, and yours as a hydrologist, and yours with everything you do with human resources. It's all helped move these things forward, in ways that couldn't have happened otherwise. So you're worth your time.
So is it a meeting rate when we're convened as the board, but when Roger comes in, is it an hourly rate of $87.50? Because $175, if it's based on a 2-hour meeting, a separate hourly rate is $87.50. I don't know. But I agree that contributions and time that people need to be fairly compensated.
The one meeting, the language, one meeting rate per day. Where'd that come from?
I got that from both the DNRC and the tribes. That's what was communicated to me. So I don't know if it was in any formal document.
Is it an MOA or MOU
I
language?
haven't seen it, so I don't know.
I never saw it in writing. I was just verbally told, this is how we do it.
Oh, I know where it was. Sorry, I'm just second here. I'll get it figured out. I'll remember how to use my computer.
But we have 5 minutes because 6 is a hard stop.
Can I, can go there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that one meeting per day comes from the guidance that we got from the Lieutenant Governor.
Okay, That is helpful.
And I'm not aware of any like formal memorandum of understanding or agreement, but that was the guidance.
and in the hourly rate, I mean, for the meeting that Roger went to, he had to read a bunch of stuff from D&Q before he came there, so it's not really just that it was a 2-hour meeting, he showed up, prepared for the 2-hour meeting.
Yeah, and I don't, I guess if we're rolling in preparation, I don't know how to do this, to be honest with you, if you get them in preparation for this meeting or what, I'm still. I guess that's why I like that minimum standard, 2 hours or something, just, and then you're gonna put in a diligent effort to do something.
But what if you have to prep 4 hours for a 1-hour meeting?
That's right.
And then you don't count the 1 hour, so you don't get compensated at all. Because that can happen.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there, like prepping 4 hours for interviews that last 30 minutes. So should I not get compensated for that, right?
Right.
So, I think we keep this simple. It's like, whether it's an hour or 10 hours.
And when I got on, gonna get on this board, I looked at it as some volunteer involvement. I didn't look at it as compensation. I was gonna be financially rewarded for this, It's a volunteer thing for the most part, but then, we're spending a lot of time on this.
you have a level of expertise and experience that is incredibly valuable to the board and to even into the office and the functions. And it,
Well, we all do, Teresa. We all,
it needs to be valued. It, you know, but I mean,
I think it just needs to be equitable across the board, not for everyone. Whatever, however you decide it, you know, I just think we need to figure it out.
mhm.
We need a proposal. Start somewhere. I mean, we've got a baseline. Our baseline is 175 per meeting, and that includes preparation. That's what I get, our baseline is. So how do we apply that to other meetings other than regular meetings? And then what other compensation do we expect?
Well, I'm gonna go here for a minute. Maybe when there are situations like occurred today, those don't occur on scheduled work group meetings or scheduled board meeting days, so that there's no duplication, so that if Roger's traveling down here to do something or Ken's doing something that's done on non-board meeting days. Then we recognize your contribution and the prep and all that. And then for him, this is a great example for today, then, you know, so maybe it's a scheduling thing. Okay, putting that there, are you saying that the chair or that the chair or vice chair have the authority to do that? Or you're
That's
suggesting-
a suggestion because, like for today, it was convenient because the state folks are already driving up.
Ah,
So
okay,
there,
okay,
it wasn't like put on, the meeting wasn't scheduled today without some intention.
okay, got it,
Right.
okay.
And so
For
maybe,
efficiency, yeah.
maybe we could, set up an exception, you know, that would help get out of this rub point of longer amounts of time, and then, just, we do that through the chair, the vice chair, verbally.
There's another additional thought, and this may or may not be the solution, but, so we've got this 175 includes prep time.
Yep.
Not 100% sure where that came from.
That was the email.
Yeah, but that essentially comes from the state and tribe agreeing to that. In addition to whatever else we're talking about, maybe we need to ask or point out the concerns we have and suggest that maybe the 175 per meeting, including prep time, is more adequate.
They also, for what it's worth, have given your budget an allocated amount of 30,000 from the tribe, 30,000 from the state for this compensation, which is supposed to include, the tribe's portion is supposed to include the 2 tribal appointees plus half of the 5th member. The state's allocation is supposed to include the state appointees plus half of the 5th member. So there is a budget. And when we get down here a little bit lower, I am trying to prompt you to let me know what happens with budget shorts and budget longs. You know, because we do need to, that's a different threshold issue, when we, you know, when we exceed the total allocations or from one side or the other's allocations. You guys gotta have some spring together, give me some direction.
So then is it better just to do a flat rate for the year, regardless of how many meetings you attend? There's a budget, you divide by 5, that's what you get for the year.
Work for social justice for the TSPP, that's what they did. They gave me a flat rate for the year, and they divided it up 4 or 5 payments or something.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess the optics of that are gonna be this idea. But I'm all for it.
But you're reaching towards something that's crossed my mind is, you know, is it's similar to just setting a annual membership, specific membership budget.
Yeah, I think the optics on it would be a heck of a lot better, right? Instead of it being this, and an auditing and bookkeeping nightmare, it's just like, this is what it is. And some of you may work less hours if you were to divide it up by an hour, or some work more, but this is what you agree to when you sign on.
The agreeing to what we sign on means we know that ahead of time. We didn't know this ahead of time.
No,
And so the argument, or the whole point we're trying to make is that what you just said, that's already there. 175, we take it or leave it,
exactly.
right?
Yes, good point. And I think
And
that's it.
so at this point, the only other, unless that changes, the question really is, how do we apply this to other meetings and what other compensation are we going to approve?
I like the exception, I like that, but I also like when board members have specific expertise, as Roger does, that the board treats him fairly and compensates him. And if that ends up being a scheduling thing, then I think we should make that effort for him.
Scheduling would be easy. The other question more then is what proposal we need a proposal.
Well,
then for
but
how to
then-
do this.
Then when he meets with the office of the engineer and other folks, that constitutes a meeting for him because he wouldn't be there if he weren't on this board and if he didn't have the expertise.
I hear what you're asking for, Clayton, and you've asked for it several times from us, and we're not answering your question. And it's because it gets complicated. And I think all of us are trying, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, I'm trying to avoid answering that question because to answer it means scales and hours and lots of definitions for things. And I don't feel I have the right to tell the board 20 years from now how to do that. I'd like to just keep it really simple. And then if people want to make it more complex at a later date, they can. But
I'm only asking because that's where we're at here.
exactly.
I understand the other alternatives to that, so I think we need to figure out how to get a proposal in front of us that we can all chew on and decide on. How do we do that?
Yeah.
And I think we're probably not gonna get that done today, so we need to think about that.
Okay, that's fair.
We're past 6 now. You guys want to continue, we can do that and chew on this some more today. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with what this is. To me, to simply say that we got 175 per meeting, that includes prep time. And then we got to figure out how to apply that. That's awful. It is awful complicated and maybe a little bit shortchanging on one hand. On the other hand, we're gonna have long-term budget issues we're gonna have to consider. So once we get to the budget, maybe at some point, if we're going to go with a different sort of compensation package that we want to recommend, then maybe we need to jump to the budget question sooner than later.
Well said, well said.
And if we are, excuse me, identifying areas of concern. What about the filing fee? Water right filing fee. Ethan will say to me, Teresa, that wasn't ever intended to cover everything, but this is and Ethan says it's defined in the compact. But it's and I appreciate, but there are areas here that we're grappling with that whoever thought would be grappling with. I don't believe a filing fee of 125 is adequate. I feel like we're that's set up to fail when you judge the staff time and the review of that and the conciseness we want.
Maybe we can tackle that one
Next year?
as we get through this, after we get through this, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Good point.
I did just go to this section because this does have the obscure referring to some of the other compensations, right or wrong. This has got the IRS standard mileage for your hours that you drive. And then it looks to the state meal compensation. That would mean that you would get a meal compensation for this evening. If you're here more than 3 hours, which is now occurred, you are 9 minutes past the mark. For you to get your evening meal compensation of $14.50 if you were to adopt these bylaws immediately. But
No, that's interesting, because you went to that 3 hours, I put on there, it should be 4 hours, but that doesn't mean.
I plagiarized the current state practice,
yeah.
so,
Yeah,
So we got 2 hours, 3 hours.
all right, Georgia, any more comments for today?
Nope.
Teresa?
Nope.
There's one thing on
Roger,
that that
that's
we
one.
should think about is if we're gonna use state rates or federal rates.
I think we
Throw
should
that
go
out,
federal.
since we're talking about.
whatever you end up doing, I'd like to also adopt for our employees, because,
That makes sense.
Well,
I could dumb it down to like having one.
is it too much to suggest that we look at all the different, the state rates, the federal rates, the tribal rates, compare them and then decide?
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Can we pull that together?
I will have that
All right,
for your
let's have
next
those. All right,
work session.
anything else, Roger?
No, I
Anything
just,
else? Ethan?
uniform.
Anything else, Ethan?
Nope, I'm good to go, thank you.
All right, let's call this works committee, work session, board meeting adjourned. Thank you. Oh, I was supposed to take a vote. Motion to adjourn.
I,
All in favor, right? Okay, we're adjourned.
we're sure.
Thanks, guys.
It's like trying to herd cats on this whole thing, so.
And he's been great.
It's not, it's not me, it's you guys. Good work, good job.
No, but I appreciate you for keeping us on task and keep asking the hard questions.
We'll get there. We've done it. We did quite a bit. Think hard about the compensation stuff. We'll have to. Maybe if you've got a proposal, submit it, get it in.
Flat rate.
We can have, just how and what to do. I mean, when the post